The Sabbath is God's law about observing sacred time. Just as the tabernacle is God's law about observing sacred space. Now, this may sound a little philosophical rather than spiritual, but it is truly not. Okay, let me explain, so hang in there with me, as this might seem complex, but it really isn't. A scientist would rightly say that we live in a universe that consists only of space and time. Okay? Space consists of 3 dimensions. Time is one more dimension, giving us a total of 4. So the first 3 dimensions, space, are very easy to grasp because we can simply look at the room in which we meet, this space that we've acquired for us to congregate, and see it has length, width, and height. What's not so easy to grasp, though, is time. See, we can't see time. We can't touch it. But we can observe its effects. It's especially observable to me every morning in my mirror. Because I look at this wrinkling face with a ring of gray hair around the crown of my head and ask, who is that? I mean, that image sure doesn't look like what my mind expects to see. I don't feel like that guy in that mirror looks. All right, aging is the effect of time. But what is time? Just as an inch or a meter is a measurement of the first 3 dimensions that we talked about, time is actually a measurement of decay, as expressed in the second law of thermodynamics. Okay. All physical things decay, but they decay at differing rates. Time measures the rate of decay. A rock decays a lot slower than a human. But not all rocks decay at the same rate. And for that matter, not all humans decay at the same rate. Okay. In fact, our most accurate time measuring devices, atomic clocks, actually use the nearly perfectly steady rate of decay of certain atomic particles to make them work. No, this isn't a science lesson. It's a lesson to help us understand at least part of God's rationale behind Sabbath. Since our God created a universe of 4 dimensions consisting of time and space, so He has ordained a means of enshrining the holiness of all those 4 dimensions of His creation. The tabernacle is representative of the 3 dimensions of space. The Sabbath is representative of that 4th dimension, time. God sanctifies the tabernacle by setting it apart from all other human space. And He dwells in it. And He sanctifies the Sabbath. He sanctifies the Sabbath by setting it apart from all other blocks of time. And He declares this specific block of time, Shabbat, to be holy. No other piece of space at the time of Moses and then for several hundred more years was set apart as holy, to embody the holiness of space, and no other block of time has ever been set apart as holy for the purpose of embodying the holiness of time. Okay. Certainly other blocks of time, other days, all right, have been ordained and set aside to honor other things, that God wants honored. Biblical feasts, for example. But none of those things had the specific purpose of honoring God's creation of time. So the Sabbath is God's designated day to give tangible glory to His creation of the fourth dimension, time. Together, the tabernacle and the Sabbath enshrine the holiness of God's creation. Now, keeping this in mind, let's see what we can glean from these last few verses of chapter 31 about the Sabbath, about this holy block of time. Okay. The ending words of verse 13 is another of those interesting but usually overlooked little phrases that carries a large meaning. All right? And the significance of it is explained in verse 14. At the end of verse 13, it says, "So that you may know that I am the Lord who makes you holy." Your Bible version may say, sanctifies you, or consecrates, or some such thing in place of holy, but it's all the same thing. Okay? The word holy or sanctify is translated from the Hebrew root word kadosh, K-A-D-A-S-H, kadosh, which indeed means holy or to be holy. Okay? To be set apart, which is what the English word sanctified means, to be set apart. But pay attention to what God seems to be saying here. He says that the purpose for Israel keeping the Sabbath is what? To make you holy. Now that is no small thing, and it carries with it rather large implications. In verse 14, there is another interesting phrase that works in conjunction with the one we just looked at in verse 13. And it is most meaningful if we accept what it means in its most literal sense, which is usually always the best way to study the Bible. It starts out like this: "Keep the Sabbath, for it is holy to you." Now, what I want to look at is the word that is translated holy in this verse. In other words, verse 14. Not verse 13 now, verse 14. In Hebrew, the word used here is kodesh. K-O-D-E-S-H. The previous was what? Kadash. K-A-D-A-S-H. Okay? Now, even though kodesh is taken from the root word kadesh, it has a slightly different meaning, as you can imagine. Kodesh does not mean holy. This is poor scholarship. In Hebrew, kadash means holy. So if kodesh, which is the word used here in verse 14, doesn't mean holy, what does it mean? It means holiness. Holiness. Most literally, this verse reads, "Keep the Sabbath because it's holiness for you." So what's the difference? Am I splitting hairs? No. The way it is normally translated in verse 14, the way it's typically translated in most of our Bibles is, it's got this sense to it. I want you to keep the Sabbath because I made it holy, and therefore you're to consider it holy, and you're to observe it because it's a holy day. Right? I mean, that's how we see it. But that's not really the meaning. There's a little more nuance to that. Here's what it does mean. God is saying, I want you to keep the Sabbath because not only did I declare it holy, but the Sabbath clothes you in a state of holiness. The Sabbath clothes you in a state of holiness in my eyes when you obey me and observe it. That's what it means. Whoa. This is a little different. The first way is, I want you to do this because I made the Sabbath holy and I want you to respect the holiness of the Sabbath. The second way is, by observing the Sabbath, you take on the holiness of the Sabbath. It's the holiness of the Sabbath that, when imputed upon you, transmitted to you, makes you holy too. So verse 13 says, I'm going to make you holy. And verse 14 says, I'm going to do that by transmitting the holiness inherent in my Sabbath to you, if you obey and observe my Sabbath. Now, this concept really shouldn't sound strange to us at all. Okay? Because if we're told that in order for us to enter the kingdom of heaven, we must be righteous according to God's standard, but it's utterly impossible for a man to attain that state of saving righteousness on our own, then what do? By faith in Yeshua, we are clothed in His righteousness. Right? Okay. Yeshua's righteousness is imputed to us. Yeshua's righteousness is transmitted to us. God is laying out the principle right here in Exodus, that by means of His grace, He will impute upon Israel, He will assign to Israel a state of holiness that can't be achieved any other way. Now, this also goes a long way towards helping us to understand what Christ really meant when He said the Sabbath was made for man, not man for the Sabbath. You see, He was saying that it wasn't necessary for the creation of man in order to bring holiness to the Sabbath. It was necessary that the Sabbath be created in order that holiness might be brought to man. The seriousness of the Sabbath ordinance is underlined when verse 14 continues by saying that whoever profanes the Sabbath is to be cut off. They're to be separated from God. Cut off can mean that they're destined to die short of a normal lifespan. Or it can mean, like in this instance, that they're to be executed for failure to observe the Sabbath. And later in Torah, we'll get an example or two of the death sentence being applied to someone who did not properly observe Sabbath. Okay, how long is this Sabbath ordinance to last? Verse 16 says, perpetually, forever. God says the Sabbath is a sign between He and Israel. In Hebrew, the word for sign is ot. O-W-T-H, ot. And the sense of the word is that it's an affirmation. It's a proof. It's a mark of distinction. The Sabbath is a mark of distinction that sets the relationship between God and Israel apart from everybody else. And further on in verse 16, he makes this connection between the creation of the universe, which we spoke of at the beginning of our lesson, and the observance of Shabbat. Now let me see if I can illustrate something for you. Touchy subject. I said that the Sabbath is a very specific block of time. What block of time does the Bible lay out in all instances as that block of time? The seventh day. It's set apart from all other blocks of time to embody the holiness of time as the fourth dimension of God's creation. I was born on November the 26th. So my birthday is on November the 26th every year, hopefully. But, what if I decided that I just preferred to remember my birthday on March the 15th? How about if when March the 15th came around, I declared that in my home, this is November the 26th? My birthday. Well, While there's certainly no law against it, with an equal certainty, it really doesn't make a lot of sense, does it? All right? And it sort of ruins the whole purpose of having a birthday. March 15th is not November 26th, no matter how you cut it. Each day, each of them are very specific and separate days. Friends, the Bible, not me, the Holy Scriptures, defines Sabbath as the seventh day. I didn't do it. The set-apart, sanctified block of time that the Lord has established as representative of the fourth dimension of His creation is the seventh day of His 7-day week. It's not any block of time that we choose. We can no more choose our own definition of Sabbath than we can choose our own definition of Messiah.